So, welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover that day's newspaper in a very short span of time within 20 minutes. Now, today's newspaper featured some very important news items which are very important for your civil services examinations. All right, so let's straight away jump to the news items of the day topics. So, news items that featured in today's newspaper are as following. Number one is who is Muhammad Yunus? Now, we all are aware of the crisis taking place in Bangladesh. Former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been ousted. An interim government has been formed in Dhaka. And who is going to head that interim government? It's going to be Muhammad Yunus, former Nobel Peace Prize winner and a very renowned, respected figure in Bangladesh. So, who is Muhammad Yunus? What is his contribution? We'll talk about this. Then, recently, a USA court, an American court, passed an antitrust ruling against Google. And this antitrust ruling has a lot of implications for India as well and Google's operations in India as well. So, we'll take a look at this ruling and we'll also talk about what antitrust is. Then, we all have heard, if you are following parliamentary sessions these days, if you're following the news which covers those parliamentary sessions, you all must be aware of this word called privilege motion. Opposition parties have filed privilege motions against Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah, and a few other BJP MPs. So, what is privilege motion? We'll talk about this. It's a parliamentary procedure. And recently, there was this news that Citizenship Amendment Act (CAA) paperwork has been simplified for minorities of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan who visited India before 2014, if they want to apply for citizenship in India, persecuted minorities in these countries, well, they can avail citizenship under this act. So, what is this act? How is this paperwork simplified? We'll talk about this news item. All right. So, without further delay, let's straight away jump to topic number one, which is who is Muhammad Yunus? Well, Muhammad Yunus is also known as the father of microfinance. Now, basically, what is microfinance? Microfinance, as the name suggests, finance means, well, for a lack of better word, let's call them loans. So, finance means loans given to people, and microfinance means small loans. Now, small loans are generally given to poorer sections of the society, disadvantaged sections of society. Okay, so for these people a whole system was put in place so that these types of disadvantaged sections of a society can also avail loans at reasonable interest rates, at very low interest rates, so that they can be extracted out of poverty, right? So the use of microfinance, providing small easy interest rate loans to poor people so that they can be extracted out of poverty, this idea is known as the idea of microfinance. And who championed this idea? Well, Muhammad Yunus championed this idea, and his experiments in Bangladesh were so successful that they were replicated in other countries as well, including India. India also uses microfinance to extract people out of poverty. Okay. Now, he recently took oath as chief advisor to the interim government in Bangladesh. In fact, the students who protested against Sheikh Hasina and led to her dethroning of sorts, ouster of sorts, they also suggested Muhammad Yunus's name. Okay. Now, Muhammad Yunus has been an enemy of Sheikh Hasina since 2009. There was some misunderstanding between the two. Both did not trust each other, and Sheikh Hasina came to power in 2009. Well, she launched a series of criminal cases against him, and he had to leave Bangladesh. Now he has come back to Bangladesh, and he is heading the government there in Dhaka. Okay. Now, let's talk about Muhammad Yunus a bit more, his contributions. Okay, his biggest contribution was his idea of microfinance. For that, he established the Grameen Bank. We'll talk about this. Well, Muhammad Yunus got his economics from Vanderbilt University in 1971, the same year when Bangladesh Liberation War was happening, right? Bangladesh was fighting its war of independence against Pakistan's army, right? In the same year, he finished his PhD, and he was actually a member of a civil society in US which was supporting Bangladesh liberation war against Pakistan. Okay. Now, after to his country, since he was a doctorate in economics, he worked briefly at Planning Commission before joining us Chittagong University as the head of economics department. Okay, because he was very well qualified. Now he says that in 1975-76 there was this famine in Bangladesh, and it led to the deaths and misery of countless numbers of in Bangladesh. And it is only then and there that the idea of using microfinance to alleviate economic stress in Bangladesh. And for that reason, in 1976, he started Grameen Bank, a pilot project for Grameen Bank, where through which he provided microfinance to poorer sections so that they can get themselves out of poverty. Now, this Grameen Bank became extremely successful. In 1976, it started as a pilot project in a village of Chittagong, but in 1983, it became a full-fledged bank. It provides collateral-free loans because poor people don't have any collateral to put to get loans. So it provides collateral-free loan, low-interest credit to poor, women, and socially economically marginalized sections. And this bank, microfinance bank, became so successful that in 2006, Yunus received Nobel Peace Prize for it. Okay, and this became one of the biggest microfinance banks of the world. As of June 2024, Grameen Bank operates in 94% of the villages in Bangladesh. So it was a success story in Bangladesh. Yunus was also awarded Nobel Peace Prize. Since its inception, this Grameen Bank has given $38.66 billion of loans to students, to poor people for constructing houses, micro enterprises, to poor people who want to establish their own business, and all sorts of other loans. Okay, its recovery rate generally, when banks do not prefer giving loans to the poor because they feel that poor people won't return their money back. As it is, they are not providing any collateral or security for their loans. But Grameen Bank was so successful that it is providing loans to poor people, and it has more than 96% of recovery rate. Okay, Grameen Bank model has been replicated across the developing world as a way to operate sustainable development initiatives with women at its centers. So Grameen Bank was extremely successful. The story of Grameen Bank became extremely successful, and this model of Grameen Bank was replicated everywhere in the developing world, including India. All right. So this is Muhammad Yunus's legacy. He's very popular. He's very well respected in today's Bangladesh, and that is why student protesters asked him to be the head of the government. Okay, that's his story. That's all you need to know about him. Okay, his story is quite long, but we don't have time to cover his entire story, and we don't need to also. Okay, now let's straight away jump to news item number 2: U.S. antitrust ruling against Google. Now, recently, a U.S. District Court of Columbia, its Judge Amit Mehta, declared that Google is a monopoly and it has violated antitrust rules. Okay, now what are antitrust rules? Well, antitrust rules are rules that prevent a monopolist or a company that has dominance in a market to exploit its dominance against weaker companies, okay, smaller companies. So if a company is using its monopoly position to discriminate or block access to smaller companies, or create conditions of unfair competition for smaller companies, that smaller companies are unable to compete against this big company, or it creates conditions where it exploits its dominant position to become more dominant, well, then it is violating antitrust rules. Okay, and Google has been accused of doing just that. Okay, now how is Google doing that? Well, it was said that there are many search engines in the world. Okay, Google is just the most popular one. But what Google is doing is that Google has tie-ups with various phone manufacturers. Okay, Apple, Samsung, Xiaomi, many other phone manufacturers. And Google has been using these tie-ups to provide its search engine services as the default services in these phones. So if you buy a Samsung phone, you don't have a choice to use other search engines. Basically, Google is pre-installed on your phone. Similarly, Google is pre-installed, or Google is the default page on your Safari browser if you're an Apple user. Okay, so basically, Google apps are pre-installed on Android phones. Okay, so Google is using its dominant position. Plus, it has tie-ups with Apple as well, where it is being used as a default browser. People have little choice in choosing another browser, and because of that, other search engine companies are finding it difficult to compete against Google, because Google, using its dominant position, has tie-ups with different phone companies. You also know this. If you buy an Android phone, YouTube, Google, and various other Google apps are pre-installed on your Android phone. They're already installed on your Android phone, right? So this is known as default general search services, or general search default search engine. So Google has become a default search engine, which is against antitrust rules, and that is why Amit Mehta ruled against Google. Okay, so antitrust means you should not use your dominant position to discriminate or exploit smaller players. Okay, so now let's take a look at the issue in detail. Though I've explained that issue to you, but what has Justice Mehta said? Justice Mehta said that Google is using its dominant position to become the default search engine. He ruled that a consequence of Google's position as the default search engine is that it now operates at a scale that disincentivizes competitors from emerging in the same space. Just and this complaint against Google was also filed by USA's Justice Department, and various other states filed this complaint against Google. Okay, that Google has been paying companies like Apple and Samsung billions of dollars to make its suite of apps. Okay, so to make its collection of apps like YouTube, Google, Gmail pre-installed on their phones. It was paying billions of dollars to these phone manufacturing companies, and because of that, these phone manufacturing companies were providing Google and its services as default services. Okay, now what is the situation in India? Though this ruling has no bearing for India because this is a USA's court, so it's the rulings of this court would apply to America. Okay, but already Competition Commission of India, which is India's antitrust regulator, had imposed a monetary penalty of more than 1,000 crores on Google in October 2022, and it was imposed for a similar reason. Okay, the reason for which Justice Amit Mehta passed a ruling against Google, it was for the similar reason Competition Commission of India fined Google. It held that mandatory pre-installation of Google mobile suite, for example, Google Search app, YouTube, Gmail, were pre-installed on Android device. And because people had little choice in deleting those apps also and using another search engine app, so Google was exploiting its dominant market position. Plus, Ministry of Corporate Affairs has recently tabled draft competition bill. Okay, in this draft competition bill, these monopolists like Google, Facebook, and these dominant social media companies would be designated as systemically significant digital enterprises. Okay, they would be designated as SSDs, and certain restrictions shall be placed on these SSDs so that they don't use their monopoly position to exploit others. Okay, so already India is tabling a bill to regulate these dominant. Some of the restrictions placed on SSDs would be ban on favoring their own products or services. Sometimes Google favors its own products and services on its search engine. Okay, something else and that product features that, and restrictions on using and sharing users' personal data without their consent. So this would be banned. All right. So India is already doing in that something in that direction to regulate Google's dominant position. Okay. Plus, Competition Commission of India had given a similar ruling and fined Google already. What USA is doing now was done by India in 2022. Okay, and we'll jump to next news item, which is privilege motion. Okay, so as Parliament adjourned sine die, that means the session is over. Senior Congress leader Jairam Ramesh on Friday pointed out that he has submitted 4 notices for moving privilege motion against BJP leaders, including Narendra Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah. The privilege motion is being passed against Amit Shah for there are allegations by opposition members that he misleaded the public while talking about or he gave misleading statements while talking about the Wayanad natural disaster. Wayanad natural disaster, landslide in Kerala. Well, questions were asked to the Home Minister and he gave misleading statements. So that is breach of privilege of members of parliament. So in our country, members of parliament have certain privileges. If anyone breaches that privilege, then an investigation or something, some consequence follows. Okay. Now, what are those privileges? One privilege is, that you shouldn't lie on the floor of the house. Why? Because you are actually giving false information to all the MPs. So that is a breach of their privilege. Okay. So what is this privilege thing? First of all, let's talk about privilege motion. What is it? So, privilege motion is a procedural device that allows members to bring to notice of the House any case of breach of privilege or contempt of House. So, if any member of the Parliament feels that their privilege has been breached, or all the privilege of all the members of the Parliament has been breached, where a privilege motion is passed. This motion can only be passed after the permission of the presiding officer. So, Speaker in case of Lok Sabha and Chairman in case of Rajya Sabha. All right. Once the motion is passed, the case of breach of privilege or the allegation of breach of privilege is investigated and examined by a privilege committee in both houses. So if the motion is passed in Lok Sabha, then privilege committee of Lok Sabha examines it. In Rajya Sabha, then Privilege Committee of Rajya Sabha examines it. Privilege committees in both the houses are standing committees, so they are elected every year and they are permanent committees. Okay. In Lok Sabha, there are 15 members to this committee. In Rajya Sabha, there are 10 members in this committee. Okay. They investigate. Now, what do we mean by privilege? You know what privilege motion is? You know what who investigates that privilege motion? What is breach of privilege? Look, parliamentary privileges are special rights, immunities, and exemptions enjoyed by two houses of parliament, their committees, and their members. Now, there is no exhaustive list of privileges. I mean, no one knows what these privileges are. In Article 105 of the Constitution, two privileges are mentioned, that parliamentarians have freedom of speech and right of publication of its proceedings. So, all the proceedings of the parliament have the right to be published in news or media outlets. These are the only two privileges mentioned in the Constitution. Apart from that, that you can't lie to a member of parliament or many other privileges, they are not codified at all. They're nowhere written. Okay. Parliament has not made any law where it provides a list of all these privileges. Okay. So there is no exhaustive list or list of privileges except two privileges which are written in Indian Constitution, Article 105. So nowhere it's written that you can't lie on the floor of the house. Nowhere it's written. It's examined on case to case basis by privileges committee. This committee decides what is privilege or not. Okay. Generally, all the privileges enjoyed by members of parliament of UK, because we got our constitution and our parliamentary democracy similar to that of United Kingdom, right? So privileges there for their MPs are generally considered privileges in India as well. Okay. Now, who enjoys these privileges? Well, all members of parliament enjoy these privileges. All participants in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha's proceedings, even if they are not members of the house, they also enjoy these privileges. So, for example, Attorney General is sometimes called in to sit in the House. He enjoys these privileges. Some union ministers are unelected. They also enjoy these privileges in the House. Now, President is also a part of Parliament, but President does not enjoy these privileges. President enjoys a separate set of privileges which are mentioned in Article 361 of the Constitution. So remember, these privileges extended to members of parliament are not extended to president, though he's a member, not member of parliament, but the office of president is part of legislature. Okay, and last but not the least, CAA Paperwork Simplified. The Center Friday expanded the ambit of rules issued under Citizenship Amendment Act to facilitate grant of Indian citizenship to persecuted minorities coming from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Now, the ministry clarification came after many applicants seeking Indian nationality or Indian citizenship they said that they were facing difficulties. So, government basically simplified the rules to obtain citizenship. Now, what is CAA? Very simple. It was enacted in 2019 for granting Indian citizenship to Hindu, Sikhs, Jain, Buddhist, Parsi, and Christian migrants from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan who came to India before 31st December 2014. Now, this act was enacted in 2019, but the rules for this act as to how you should apply for citizenship, they were only framed in March 11, 2024. Okay, these rules deal with the procedure how to apply for citizenship if you are a persecuted minority in these three countries and came to India before 2014. What are the rules? How should you file the paperwork and all that stuff? So these were the rules that were only published in March 11, and recently government actually liberalized or simplified these rules so that it becomes easier for these persecuted minorities to attain Indian citizenship. All right. And on that note, we end today's lecture. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I hope it added value to your preparation, though it would add more value if you are consistent and regular with this lecture series. So make sure that you make this lecture series a part of your daily routine. Make it your daily habit. You just have to spare 20 minutes daily, and your current affairs would get covered. And I don't have to remind you that how important current affairs are for your civil services examination. I mean, everyone knows about that. Okay, so I won't stress upon the importance of this topic because everyone knows about it. All right. On that note, I'll be signing off. I'll see you next time with another day's current affairs. Thank you.